So we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, and just by way of a brief reminder, we ended chapter 4 where Solomon's talking about it says better is a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who will not be admonished. He's going to be making more comparisons of things that you normally would think there would be a difference between, but really when it comes down to it, being a poor youth is actually better than being an older king. Normally you wouldn't think that was the case, but when it comes to how things really are in this life, an old king that won't thinks he knows everything won't be admonished. It's actually better to be a wise youth, because a wise youth will listen to counsel and look to see if it has merit and be willing to change things. And so that's what he talked about last time. And now in chapter 5.
That's true. Get older, the kids, all the younger people do things and they show you it and you go back to my day. We have a better way of doing it. But
Yeah.
what I'm probably saying is, I don't want to learn it and I'm going to do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have a tendency to lump all youth in the category of ignorant. Like they just don't know. I've lived for 50 years. I know. I've been around the block a few times. But there is such a thing as a wise youth, and we, as adults, older folks, we need to be willing to listen and consider. They'll let us know, by their lives, and you can if you consider properly, you know whether what they're saying is wise or not. But you got to be willing to listen. Can't be one of those that won't be admonished. So with that in mind, in chapter 5, he says, walk prudently when you go to the house of God. So he's talking about as people approach the temple, and why would they approach the temple?
To give it for an offering.
Okay, give an offering or to worship God. That's where they did it. Part of their worship was offering up the sacrifices. All the sacrifices, not all of them were, to cover sins that they had committed. They offered other sacrifices to show their reverence for God and such like. But he says, walk prudently when you go there. What is prudently? Okay, what I didn't hear all of. Okay, carefully, using wisdom. Yeah.
This is the house of God. God dwells there.
Okay. And that's a principle that we need to understand. We need to go into our worship thoughtfully and respectfully. And a lot of times we get caught up with our conversations with one another, and even though they're great conversations and everything, well, we came here to worship God. And so we need to be thoughtful about that to make sure our worship is acceptable to God. One of the things that makes worship not acceptable is when your heart is not in it, and when you're not considering what you're doing. And one of the things that they were doing is going to be seen right here. He says, and draw near to hear rather than to give the sacrifice of fools. So they would come to the temple to give sacrifice, but he says there is such a thing as the sacrifice of fools. And you can imagine what that is. They come and sacrifice just because that's what you do. We've done it all our lives. Not even giving any consideration or care about the worship to God, showing reverence to him, but just doing it because that's what everybody's doing it because that's what you're supposed to do. rather than do that, he says, draw near to hear. That kind of ties in with the old king. You know, he approaches life with, don't try to tell me anything, I'll tell you. The one that won't be admonished. Well, we need to have the attitude, yeah, I want to listen. I want to hear what you had to say, God. I don't care if it comes from a poor youth or a wise old king, wherever it comes from, I want to hear rather than make a mistake and sacrifice improperly or, offer my worship improperly. So we need to have that attitude also. When we come, we need to be open-eared, ready to hear God's word, ready to listen to what he wants to teach us. And then he says, here's why, there's that little 4. They do not know that they do evil. They're coming and sacrificing and they think it's fine. What better thing can you do but sacrifice to God? Well, he says they don't know they're doing evil. And what is it that's evil about their sacrifice? They're not thinking about it. They're not doing it for the right reason. So I'm going to get this up out of the way a little bit. So that's why you don't want to be one of those foolish people that don't consider what they're doing when they go to worship. Because when you don't do it right, what is it? It's evil, it's sin. And it's just like Jesus or Paul teaches about the Lord's Supper. When you go, do it in a worthy manner. If you don't, what?
Make condemnation to yourself.
All right. Yeah, if you're not discerning the Lord's body when you do it, you're eating and drinking condemnation to yourself because you're not doing it the way that Jesus instituted it to be done. Sue?
I don't do it, but someone will say something like, maybe in Facebook or something, please pray for, or Keith will send something out about somebody and say, please pray for them. And I'll think, yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then I totally forget. Now I stop, and I do say a prayer because I've committed that to God. And that's taken some growing, I think, to figure out that I'm not gonna remember this down the road to do it.
Yeah.
I need to do it now.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why it's all in the bulletin. But when we sat down to pray, do we have a bulletin in front of us to remind us? No, we don't. We should. So, yeah, we all do it, I suppose, sometimes, but probably not often enough. But there's a lot of people to pray for, and we need to do it. That doesn't mean you have to pray every night for every single person, but it wouldn't hurt anything if you did. But at least keep it before God, the things that we need to pray for. And so the bottom line is you need to walk prudently when you're coming before God. It means something to him on what's in here when you do and what's in here. And he doesn't want the sacrifice of fools. He wants people to come to listen and to worship in a way that's respectful to him, give him the glory that he deserves. Then in verse 2, he says, do not be rash with your mouth. And what does that mean?
Quick,
Pardon?
quick,
Okay, quick, but rash means something different than quick.
unthinking.
Okay, it means saying stuff before you think about it, really is what it's talking about.
Think before you speak.
Right, yeah, you're talking quickly before you have a chance to think. And that's what he's saying. Don't just talk. We all know people that do that. They just, without even considering, they'll just start talking. And a lot of times they have to walk back what they had to say, but that's not what God wants from us. Don't be rash with your mouth, and let not your heart utter anything hastily before God. He's working his way into taking an oath. But when you're coming before God, be careful what you're saying.
Think before you speak.
Think before you speak, because God is listening. And when you say something, you better mean it. And it better be something that God approves of as well. So don't be too quick. Don't be rash. Don't just talk without thinking. You better think about it. And here's why. 4. Here's why. God is in heaven and you are on earth. What do you think we're supposed to get out of that? He hears everything, but he's up in heaven. That means he's the king of the universe. He's the creator. Where are you? You're down here on the earth. You're a created one. And so which has the superiority there in that hierarchy? Yeah, we don't have to think too long to get the answer to that one. Here's why you don't want to utter things rashly, because you're talking to God in heaven and you're down here on earth. You have no business telling him anything. Here's what you need to do, God. No, that's not how it works. And so he says, therefore, let your words be few. That's a good advice to all of us. Think before you talk. Don't just talk to hear yourself talking. Let your words be few. And here's a reasoning about that. Here's why. A dream comes through much activity, and a fool's voice is known by his many words. So he's contrasting two different things here. A dream comes through much activity. What is he saying? If you have a dream, you just sit back and wait for it to happen? No, there's much activity involved. I have a dream of having whatever. Then I set about to make it happen. It takes activity to do it. A dream comes through. That's how we get things that we would like to have, and it can be physical, spiritual. I have a dream. Homer Haley, most of you probably don't even know who he is, but he's a preacher that I grew up listening to from time to time. He could start with Psalm 1, verse 1, and start quoting, and he wouldn't be done till he got to the end of the Psalms. He could say every one of them. He could say all of it. The whole book of Psalms from up here. Do you think, he had a dream. I want to be able to quote the book of Psalms. Do you think he didn't have to do some work to get that? Most of us, for us, it's beyond a dream. It's like, I don't even dare dream that, because, but if you wanted to be able to quote the book of Hebrews, you could do it. But it takes work if that's your dream. We all have dreams of different kinds. We might have a dream. I'm dreaming about a time when I could sit down with somebody and teach them the gospel and answer any question that they would have. Well, that dream is doable, but it takes work. And then he says, a fool's voice is known by his many words. He says a lot of stuff, but there isn't a whole lot of substance there. He makes promises he can't keep. He says things about people that aren't true, all kinds of things. That's what the fool does. He says, let your words be few. Get down to business and fulfill your dreams. Do the activity that it takes to fulfill those dreams, and don't be one of those guys that just talks and talks and nothing ever happens. So he's contrasting a lot of activity with many words. Jesus said, many shall say unto me, Lord, Lord. You know, they're talking, yeah, didn't we do all this stuff? And he said, I'll never knew you, because they didn't do what God said. Those are fools. They're like that. And so, I mean, this is such sage advice. I mean, it's wonderful for, I mean, it was wonderful for them when Solomon first wrote it and people could pick it up and read it, but it's just every bit as valuable today, this minute, as it was then. Well, in verse 4, then he says, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it. Here's why. He has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. We don't make vows very often these days. They made vows all the time. When would you make a vow today? Okay, that's one of them. You're making a vow to your wife, and it's before God. So what is a vow anyway? All right, it's a solemn promise that this is what I will do. And I make a vow. Sometimes a vow has a consequence that you state. Jephthah, was it Jephthah? He made a vow that if they won the battle, he would sacrifice the first thing that came to his house. First thing he saw when he came home from the battle. And what was the first thing he saw when he came home? His daughter. And to keep that vow, he actually sacrificed his daughter. Do you think he wanted to do that? Do you think he wished he hadn't made that vow? Certainly. But that little story shows how much God means it when he says, keep your vows, pay what you vowed, but don't be quick to say it. Another time in all ages that you would make a vow is, God, if you will do this for me, I will do this. If you will get me out of this addiction, then I will. And you can make a vow saying, I'll go climb a glass mountain. You say it, I'll do something. And then once we get clear of whatever it is that, God, please don't let this child die, that's very sick. If you let him live, I will become a preacher and spend the rest of my life preaching. And then the child gets well. Oh, now I've got to preach the rest of my life, whatever it is. It can be something good, something, but he said, whatever you do, pay what you have vowed. And here's why he's making a comparison with the word better. Verse 5, it's better not to vow than to vow and not pay. There are consequences to vowing and not paying. And so he says, verse 6, do not let your mouth cause your flesh to sin, nor say before the messenger of God that it was an error. Why should God be angry at your excuse and destroy the work of your hands? And so, summing that up, what we just read, if you make a vow and you don't keep it, you don't go through with your it's in the flesh. Here we're talking still about life on earth. It's in the flesh that we keep vows that we make. And if we don't keep it, it's sin. So he says, don't let your mouth cause your flesh to sin. Don't say things that you can't or don't want to do when push comes to shove. Don't let that happen. And then he says, or say before the messenger of God that it was an error. In the temple worship, when you were going to make a vow, you'd go to the temple to make a solemn vow before God. And they had an office, I guess you would say one of the priests would be called the messenger of God. you would make the vow to him as an intercessory, and he would transmit your vow to God. So he was a messenger between you and God. And that's what he's talking about here when he says, don't say before the messenger of God that it was an error. You go to the messenger, if God will do this, here's what I'm going to do. And then later on, you come back to the messenger, excuse me, I didn't mean what I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to say that. I said it wrong. No, that's not how it works. Don't say that. Don't say that it was an error. I said that by mistake. And the reason why is next. Why should God be angry at your excuse? Which tells us something about God's nature. When you say something and don't do it and just try to make up some excuse, does that make God smile? No, that makes him angry. And you don't want to have God angry at you. Of anybody in all of creation, all of universe, you don't want to get mad at you. It's God. So don't let that happen, because he has the power to destroy the work of your hands, to ruin everything that you've ever done. And when you make God angry, sometimes that's what happens. So think about what you're saying. Don't be quick to talk. Think about what you're saying. Don't let your mouth make promises that your body can't keep. So vows are very important, and it really makes a difference to God when you keep or don't keep the vows that you make. Then verse 7, he says, here's why, in the multitude of dreams and many words, there is also vanity. So here's why I was talking about everything, all that I have just said here in chapter 5. In the multitude of dreams and many words, there's also vanity. So what if I dream that I can quote the whole book of Psalms or the whole book of Ecclesiastes, and I do it? I keep it. I fulfill that dream. It just kills me when I think when Homer Haley passed away, if I could have just had, some part of that brain out of his head and put it into mine so I could get the stuff that he knew. But where is it now? It's in the grave. When he dies, it died with him. Is there a profit to that? No. I mean, he could enjoy it in this life, which is what we've been talking about numerous times already. Enjoy what God has given you. God gave him the ability to memorize it, and he used it. He enjoyed it, but did he take it with him? No. And that's the same thing that he's talking about here. There's can be a lot of dreams and many words, but it's all vanity. Life under the sun, when it all comes down to the end, it doesn't really mean anything after all. The only thing we get out of it is to use it while we got it. That's all. But he says, but fear God. Saying, have some respect, people. Think about God and consider who he is and what he has the capability of doing and what he expects from us. That's all entailed in that idea of fearing God. That is the attitude that we need to have. It's great to have a multitude of dreams, but if you don't fear God, then you might make God angry by making promises you can't keep or dreaming dreams that you shouldn't be dreaming or whatever. You need to keep God in mind. And here's a reference to what the answer to the whole solution is going to be at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, when he says, but fear God. Whatever you're doing, be sure you keep God in mind while you're doing it and have some respect for him. Okay, so now in verse 8, he's going to change to a different subject. If you see the oppression of the poor and the violent perversion of justice and righteousness in a province, do not marvel at the matter. For high official watches over high official, and higher officials over them. Do you see anything that sounds familiar? It's happening all around us.
Watching film right now that's called Hold Off,
Full guard.
yeah, dark, yeah. And this is exactly what they're doing there.
Yeah, yeah, I watched that series too, but my memory doesn't serve me well enough to remember what went on in that show, but we've got, we've got high official that's over high official, and he says that is the source of the oppression of the poor and perversion of justice. Because
They actually thought they were lazy and that they belonged down here.
right, we want to, I mean, when a representative is elected, who's he supposed to represent? The people. But which way is he looking? Down to the people or up to the next guy up? Who's he trying to impress? The next guy up or himself. And that's where the oppression and perversion of justice comes in, is because we have our mind on the wrong thing, on the wrong people. I guess so he's talking about government corruption, and that's what happened apparently in his time, and is happening throughout history right down to our time. History repeats itself and just keeps going over and over again. There is nothing new where? Under the sun. So just keep in mind all the time when we look at this book, it's under the sun. There's nothing new. It just keeps happening. What happened before, what happening now has already happened. What's in the future, whatever happens then has already happened. And so it just keeps going over and over again. Well, verse 9 says, moreover, the profit of the land is for all. Even the king is served from the field. So what is the profit from the land? Okay, you plant one seed, and what do you get from it? One seed? No, you get a whole bunch. That is profit. You end up with more than you started with. So he says, so what is that profit for? The profit of the land, that's the fruits and vegetables and grain and all that. Even the animals feed off the land. So if you you have a cow and she has 2 calves, that's profit. But they eat the grass from the ground. And anyway, the bottom line is there is profit from the land. You have more at the end than you had to start with here, life on earth. But who's it for? It's for everybody. Everybody eats off the land. The king and all his glory, does he eat bread? Does the poor guy eat bread? Yeah, they get that from the grain, from the land. It's for everybody. And he's talking about oppressing the poor, taking away from them what's rightfully theirs, so that you can have more for yourself. That's what all this corruption is about. But that profit is not just for you governor, or you king, or whatever. It's for everybody. And that's what our politicians forget sometimes. They want to tax people to death, take all their money to do what with it?
Squander
You ever see a politician that went in to Congress and came back poorer than they were when they went in? It may happen, but most of the time they have a lot more. Nancy Pelosi, for example. Well, Joe Biden, any of them, it doesn't matter, but Joe Biden, he never worked a day in his life at a regular job. He was a politician the whole time, but how many houses did he have when he left the presidency? And were they little cracker? Yeah. Were they little cracker box houses? No, they weren't. Big mansions. So, but how did he get those? Or where was the money coming from to buy those? You and me. Us people that have a lot less than he's got, that's where he's getting it from. He's forgot that we all have a right to that stuff, but they don't care. The oppressors that he's talking about, they'll run roughshod over the poor people if that's what it takes to get them lifted up in society or have bigger and better houses or whatever it is. Gene, did you have a?
Yeah, Will Rogers, a famous country comedian, he said, we had good men in Congress, some of the best money can buy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly how it is. It's the best that money can buy. But we need to keep in mind that it's for everybody. There shouldn't be that kind of oppression happening. Verse 10, he who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. It's ridiculous when you think about it. But have you ever known anybody that had as much as they wanted? They say, I'm done. I've got all I want. I'm not going to try to get any more. No. I mean, once in a while you'll find somebody like that. But for the most part, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But none of us are ever satisfied with what we have. These are general principles that he's talking about. It's not saying that every single case in the world, that's how it is, but that's how it generally is with life under the sun. We're not satisfied with what we have. We always want to get more. But really, is that a great thing to think about? No, he says it's vanity. It's empty. What good is it going to do you to get more and more if you don't use it, if you don't enjoy it? It's vanity. It's futility, it's emptiness. It doesn't get where you really need to go. So then he continues, verse 11. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. If somebody wins the lottery, what happens? He finds relatives he never knew he had, finds friends that come knocking on the door that haven't spoken to him in 20 years or whatever. When a person, well, just take it in a more down-to-earth example, somebody starts off with a small farm, God blesses him, and he ends up with getting more animals than that little farm will support. What's he do? Buys some land, gets some more, so that he can grow hay there to feed his more animals. And if you do that, maybe one time you can keep up with it by yourself, but it happens again. You have to buy another field. What's going to have to happen? You're going to need people. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. The more stuff you have, the more people that you have to support whatever endeavor that is, whatever you're doing. Does that make life simpler for the guy that owns it?
Yeah.
No, it makes it more difficult. Does he have to worry anymore?
Well,
Yeah, you have to worry more. Why? Because it's not just you that you have to worry about anymore. You've hired these people and you're going to have to pay them. And so you have to worry about making sure that things work right and you don't sleep at night, whatever. So just having more stuff doesn't mean things get better. You just get more things to worry about. So he says, so what profit have the owners except there's no real gain for the owner except this, to see them with their eyes. And what does that mean? The them refers back, as I showed by the circles, refers back to the goods, to see the goods with their own eyes. What he's saying is, it's an idiom. He's saying to actually get the benefit out of it, to enjoy what you have. As your goods increase, the only profit you get is the enjoyment you get out of it. To be able to see it and appreciate it, that's where the profit is. And that's all the profit, because you don't take it with you when you leave. If you don't enjoy it while you have it, if you don't see the increase, you're just so busy doing this that you don't even look around to see all the blessings that are there. There's no profit in that. We need to enjoy, take the time to, God's blessed us with whatever we have, to enjoy it. Gene?
Jesus taught a parable based on this very principle. The man is gonna plant more and more, build more barns and so on and so forth, and he told them, your soul may be required, and
Right.
then who had all this?
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that exact issue here in Ecclesiastes before very long, which that parable will perfectly fit, but it fits here too. Just getting more and more doesn't necessarily mean everything gets better. He says in verse 12, the sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. When you work a good, honest day's job, do you sleep better than somebody that sits around looking at books? Yeah, yes, you do. You sleep well. You may not have had a lot to eat that night, but you still sleep well.